Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Can you hear me okay in the back?
Yeah.
Yeah? Great. I'm Josh Baer. Welcome to the Intro to the Austin Startup Scene as part of Austin Startup Week. We do this generally once a month, so we do it every month, but it's always fun in particular to do it during Startup Week. And I think in a lot of ways, this series of events that we do around the Intro to the Austin Startup Scene is a lot of ways like the foundation of Startup Week and what we're trying to do with that. So we do these every month. There's Intro to the Austin Startup Scene. We do how to meet angel investors, kind of intro to fundraising. We do some on how to get into an accelerator. We do ones for mentors and investors on how to get involved as a mentor or as an investor. And they're all meant to really help welcome people into the community and get them plugged in and connected. And that's really what Capital Factory is all about, is about connecting people together too. So thanks for coming to this. If you want to tweet or share anything about this, which we encourage you to do, so hopefully other people find out about it and can come learn about it, I'm at Joshua Baer. This series of talks we do is ATX Startup Scene. And if you want to send anybody a link to anything, they can just go to atxstartupscene.com, and that has the meetup groups and all the events going on and a lot more information and stuff that they can go see. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to answer, we should go about an hour and a half. I'll do my best to give a short presentation, or half of it of a presentation, and talk about the standard questions that most people ask. Things like what's different about Austin and a little bit of the history of how Austin became a great tech hub. What's special about it? How do you get a job, find a co-founder, meet investors? Where should you work? How do you know what's going on? And then at the end of that, I'm going to invite Damon Clinkscales up here, who's a really good friend of mine and another great leader in the startup community and an entrepreneurship community here in Austin. And we'll both open it up for an Ask Me Anything session or a Q&A where you guys can ask questions about anything you want. So I have some questions for you. I think there wasn't a tour today, but there is one today at 4 if you want to stick around for that after this. But who here was born in Austin? One person. Wow. You should get some kind of special award. I don't know what that is, but that's not that uncommon because one of the things about being the fastest growing city in the country is nobody was actually born here, or not many people that you meet. I moved here to Austin in 1999, and that makes me like completely old school. Like I've been here a really long time. Who recently moved to Austin? I assume that's the rest of you, or many of you. Okay, great. Who's lived in Silicon Valley? A handful. Who has a startup? A bunch of you. Who wants to work at a startup? Hope the rest of you. Who considers themselves, who self-identifies as a tech person? Okay. What about as a business person? How about who's been to South by Southwest? Half of you. All right. Anybody go to UT? Okay. All right. Great. Anyone not raise their hand for any of those questions? All right, we got you all. All right, awesome. That just helps me give an idea of who's here and what we're talking about. So as I mentioned, you can find this online at atxstartupscene.com. The slides themselves, or at least some version of them, because we update them a lot, but are at slideshare.net/Joshua Baer. Actually, I think if you go to slideshare.net/Damon, there's probably another version of the slides. Damon's given this talk to before also, and he does his own deck. The talks that we give are all recorded from that camera on the ceiling and also streamed over the internet, so you can find all of those on YouTube at Austin Tech Live. And if you didn't come to this talk and you just wanted to get the Cliff Notes, there's a blog post I wrote that's really the blog post version of how do you plug into the startup scene. And that I'd really encourage you all to check out. Hopefully you saw that before you even came here. And that's bit.ly/plug into ATX startup scene. And that's 10 different, very actionable, follow these Twitter accounts, go to these events, do these specific things. So what's different about Austin? Let's talk about that first real quickly. So Austin, first of all, one thing that we've really benefited from for a long time is we're one of the fastest growing cities in the country. I don't know who counts everybody, but apparently 165 people move here every day, and they're moving here from all over the place. And just like with many types of immigration, it's very common that the types of people who pick up and move and go try to pursue a better life and new things are very entrepreneurial. So we get a lot of entrepreneurial people moving here. It brings a lot of energy on here. We're on the top of every top 10 list. I have to actually need to update these. These are from what? There's a 2011 or last year. Just from this year, right? There's CNBC, number one new place to start a new business. Kaufman Foundation, second year in a row, number one startup community in the U.S. Indeed, Job Study, number one place for a software engineer to get the best bang for their buck, have their money go the farthest. And then on the flip side of that, which is I'm surprised to be both these things at the same time, it's the best place if you're hiring software engineers to get the best bang for your buck, to get the best value from them. And all those things just make it a great place for startups and a great place where all kinds of businesses want to be, and that's why we're such a fast-growing city. That's the Kaufman report. So what's different about Austin? You know, when I talk about this, it's funny because I've traveled to a lot of startup communities all over the country and all over the world, and there's a part where actually they're actually mostly the same, honestly. Like there's like Silicon Valley and New York and then kind of like everywhere else. And most of the other places all feel like the things they're going through are totally unique and it's like just what they're facing, but actually they're mostly facing a lot of the same issues. So I'm gonna talk about this from Austin's perspective, but actually this is really it's more about like what makes places different that aren't Silicon Valley. So one thing is that Austin's a really bootstrap first kind of place. And bootstrapping is the idea of starting something from nothing when you kind of don't really have enough resources. And instead of, for example, getting an investor to give you a big check right at the beginning and having a lot of money to go work with, you have to figure out how do I get it started without that first. And that's being resourceful. That's a lot about entrepreneurship. But that's a really common thing here in Austin and I think in many of these communities. And part of that's because the cost of doing a startup, particularly a tech-related startup, has just been dropping dramatically for the past 20 years. And so the more is expected of you. You can get more done on your own before people give you money, and you're expected to go do that. Going hand in hand with that is Austin's a very revenue-focused town, so it's going to be much easier for you to attract investors, to get press and attention, to get people to work for you who want to join your team. If you can clearly articulate how your company is going to make money. Some people that might sound like a really obvious thing. Like, of course you have to articulate how your company makes money. But I meet a lot of startups that really have no idea how they're going to make money. And there are some of those that can be very successful. But it's going to be very difficult to do a company like that here in Austin. And the result of that, the impact of that means the bar for how much traction you're going to have to show and growth is even higher and greater. But you can do it. You're just going to have to show ridiculous growth to be able to raise something that doesn't have to start something that doesn't have a clear idea how it's going to make money. Being the fastest growing being the fastest growing city in the country, why do people move here? Probably a lot of different reasons, but most people that I talk to, it's about quality of life. They're living in California, maybe you're starting to have a family, they realize they're never going to own a home out there, they realize that they want to be part of the community that's growing and be able to have influence in it, be part of shaping that community. They want to work hard, but they also want to have a great kind of social life and be able to enjoy the music and the outdoors and all the other things that happen here. So those are the reasons I see people moving here. And in general, I think that's a really good thing. I think that helps make it so that it's easier to retain talent. I think one of the biggest challenges with Silicon Valley is it's very hard both to get people to join your company and then to keep them because there's always some cool other new startup for them to go join. And people that move for quality of life, I think, are much less likely to hop to the next company for just some new buzzword or something like that. Flip side of it is, I've heard some entrepreneurs complain that it's hard to get people to bust their ass here in Austin because they kind of work 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 9 to 7, and then they want to go home and do all those other things. And sometimes doing a startup means making some really big sacrifices and and working really long hours. And that's some of the trade-offs you have to look at. Another thing about Austin is social capital is really important here. And so part of how you plug into the community and you be part of it is to go be part of it, to volunteer, to help out, to find a way that you can contribute. And I think you'll find that goes very, very far here. It's part of what I try to do by giving these talks. I think that maybe I don't know if they charged you $10 to come here today. We usually charge enough money to cover the T-shirt that we hand out, but we don't do this to make any money or anything like that. We do this because we think it helps lift up the community. We think it helps us meet great people, and there's so many other people in Austin just doing great things to bring people together, to connect them, and to make really good things happen. Damon certainly one of them, and there's many, many others. And so if you want to get involved, if you want to meet people, you want to go find there's so many groups and so many places to kind of connect with, find one that you're passionate about and go volunteer, how you can go help out, and you'll find like-minded people and find, I think, over time that those things come back to you. And finally, it all kind of comes together into this rising tide mentality. And this is something that I think is particularly great about Austin and where we are right now. And that is just this feeling that things are getting better and that they're continuing to get better and that they're going to get better for me if they get better for you. And that it's going to be easier for my company to raise money if your company is successful raising money. It's going to be easier for me to grow if you're growing. And in a lot of other places, it's a zero-sum game. They don't feel that way. They feel like for me to do well, you have to do bad. For me to, it's very cutthroat and very competitive. And the longer that we can keep this collaborative, rising tide mentality here, I think the better. So it's something that I think was really special. All right, so here's a quick history lesson. I'm not a history professor. Haven't read any books. Haven't written any books. This is from me talking to a bunch of people and what I've kind of gleaned as the history. So that's all I can say for what it is. But I've talked to a lot of people, and I think it's pretty good. And I think pretty much everybody you talk to, if you ask, like, where does it go back to? What's like one name for the tech and the startup community here in Austin? A lot of people would come back to this guy, George Kozmetsky. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us now. But George was an entrepreneur. He founded a company called Teledyne, which was a major computer company that was national. He was very involved civically here in Austin, helped create IC Squared at the University of Texas and the Austin Technology Incubator. And did many other things, but he's certainly one of the most influential people. And he got together with a number of other people, Admiral Bobby Inman, who is still here in Austin, who used to run the CIA before getting together with him and with Pike Powers to help bring to Austin this big research consortium called MCC, the Microelectronics and Computer Consortium. This was in the 80s. And at the time, the biggest concern that the US had was not about the Chinese, and it wasn't about the Russians, it was about the Japanese outsmarting us in making chips. This was like the Silicon days. And so a bunch of US companies and groups got together and pooled all this money and put together this big research consortium to help us be more competitive. And they put out this RFP. All these different cities competed to be where this big investment would go and where the company would get founded, just like they do for the Olympics or something like that. And Austin won that bid to bring MCC here to Austin. And that was one of the things that really put Austin on the map, brought a lot of engineers and talent here, and made Austin known as a place where we're for computing and for tech. The next thing.
This is the story of the little room over the pizza place at 315 Chestnut Street, the modest first-floor bedroom in Tallinn, Estonia, and the dusty basement at 1406 35th Street. It is the story of the old dining room table at 25th and Hoffman Avenue, the southbound bus barreling down I-95, and the second floor above the strip mall at Rogel and El Camino.
This magic moment,
It is the story of where every great idea begins,
so different and so new.
where those with an endless vision and an equal amount of audaciousness believed they had the power to do more, time and time again. Adele, we're honored to be part of some of the world's great stories. Stories that began much the same way ours did, in a little dorm room, number 2713.
This magic moment.
So Dell was the next big thing that happened here in Austin. Michael Dell started his company in his dorm room at UT, which you could possibly see if that big white building wasn't there right there. And it was pretty amazing. He created one of the biggest companies in the world right here in Austin and grew it over a long period of time. And all kinds of things happen out of that when a company becomes a $35 billion company. But in particular, it's the way that it builds the community, it builds the ecosystem. So there's so many things that come out of that. I mean, obviously, you look all over Austin, and there's so many things with the Dell name on it, whether it's the medical school or the children's hospital or the Jewish Community Center. So obviously, his personal wealth has had a big impact. But also, there's this whole ripple effect of the people that he's affected and that have been affected by that company. And so what happens as a company grows like that is all these people come in and they learn all this stuff. They're part of a company that's growing very, very fast. And so they meet all these other people and they work with them closely and they form teams and they know who they like to work with and who's really good at things. They are exposed to all these problems, both the direct problems that Dell is solving, but then all the problems that being one of the biggest companies in the world and growing really fast bring, right? And so those could be all kinds of different things. And then they make lots of customer relationships, right? They're working with all of Dell's customers, so they have all these relationships. And those are all the ingredients you need to come up with a new startup, to see a problem, to form a team, to have relationships, to be able to go turn it into something. And so what happens is lots of companies end up coming out of that. In addition to that, people make a lot of money in that process. So lots of millionaires were made in that process, as we called them at the time, the Dellionaires, who made millions of dollars being part of Dell as it went through that phenomenal growth. And as part of that, what did they do? Well, they went on to become venture capitalists, to go start more companies, to be angel investors, to be able to take 6 months off and start their own company. All these things came out of it from that initial wealth that was created being part of that growth and part of Dell. And that's this virtuous cycle of a company getting started, it having some success and growing, that creating wealth and opportunity and experience that then creates new companies and angel investors to invest in the next batch of ones that come through. And that cycle is what makes the startup scene. That cycle is what's started pretty much with Dell here in Austin. Now the problem is that cycle takes about 10 years to go around once, if it goes fast. And so we're a couple turns around that cycle, and Silicon Valley is a couple turns ahead of us around that cycle. But it is going. Here's another example. There was a company started after that, I think in the 90s, called Tivoli. Tivoli, this slide is 15 years old. I got it from a really old slide deck, so I'm sure it could be updated, and it would be a lot bigger. It would take over the whole screen. But what this is showing is all of the different companies that came out of Tivoli in one way or another, both from the executive team, from the talent that grew there, but all these different companies came out of that went on to create many, many more companies, and many of them could each have their own tree. And that's the kind of thing that happens when there's a big success story. Another one was called Trilogy Software. Trilogy is what brought me here to Austin. Trilogy was a company started by a guy named Joe Lemont, and it's still running here in Austin. In particular, in the first .com boom in the late 90s, Trilogy had an incredible recruiting engine. They were doing enterprise software. They were competing against Oracle and SAP, and they were recruiting from all the top engineering schools around the country and bringing hundreds of really talented top engineers right out of school here to Austin every year. And when the .com crash happened in 2000, the ramp up that they were doing kind of ended, but so many of those people that they brought to Austin stayed. And now that's actually loosely referred to as the Trilogy Mafia. And they are, if you look around at all of the most successful companies in town, you'll see Trilogy Mafia in the top leadership positions at most of those companies. And actually, I find one of the best signals to look for of a company, of a breakout company, one that's really about to blow up and be really successful, is you'll see the herd of all that Trilogy talent start getting sucked in, right? It's like getting the band back together. And you see that happened at Bizarre Voice, at HomeAway, at Indeed, at Retail Me Not, and now at Data.World is another great example, Brett Hurt's new company. And so you'll see that happen over and over again. And then here are just some of the other really big companies that each have their own trees. Each of these have created dozens of other companies and that have come out of them, and will probably continue to create many more. Here are some of the up-and-coming companies you might have heard of. I'm going to go through some of these pretty quick just to make sure we get lots of time for Q&A. Lots of big companies here in town that you might go sell to. There's so many different things about Austin we could talk about that make it special. Here are just 5 things I picked out that I think if you're going to focus on a couple things to start, everybody should know about. South by Southwest being the first one. So I saw a bunch of you have been to South by Southwest. South by Southwest is in March every year. It started out about 30 years ago as a music festival. Then they added a film festival. And then about maybe 20 years ago, or 25, they added interactive, what they called it at the time, the multimedia part of it at the time, which was like CD-ROMs and HyperCard. Then eventually that multimedia component grew to be the interactive component. And although that was the kind of the stepchild at first for a little while, it's now grown to become the biggest part of the whole festival. And now they have now it's 25 different festivals. It's gaming and health and education and social impact and a million other things. And that's one of the things that's so cool about it is it becomes this melting pot of all these different people. And over the course of what was a 7-day period and then a 10-day period, and I think with South by Southwest EDU is now a full 2-week period. All these people come to Austin from all around the world, and that's the time when the spotlight's on Austin. It's a great time if you're here to be able to do business development, to meet people that are coming here to Austin from out of town that you might not normally get to see. It's a massive marathon of a party that goes on that whole time, and it's really pretty great. And if you want to do anything real with South by other than attend, if you want to put on an event or host something or be part of it, you need to be thinking about that right now. and a lot of people don't understand that because it's October and this thing's in March, but all of the venues are being booked right now. All of the sponsorships are being locked down right now. All of that planning is happening right now, and so a lot of people don't understand that. If you think you're going to go in January, be like, I have some idea of something I'm going to do at South by, like, very unlikely it's actually going to happen. So if you want to do anything with that, you want to be thinking about that right now. As it gets closer, just as an attendee, there's two big ways to do South by that are both really, really good. You can buy a badge, which gets you official access. It's pretty expensive. It's usually $700 or $800. There's usually some cheaper ways to buy it. Like everybody at Capital Factory gets together and puts together one big order, so we get a little bit of a cheaper price. But it's pretty expensive. But it's worth it. It's a great event and gets you access to a ton of great content and panels and parties and all these other things going on. And I really enjoy that a lot. These days, I don't get to go to many panels because there's so many people here that I want to meet with and so many things that are unofficial things going on that I want to go to as well, that I end up spending most of my time doing that. And so it's important to realize you can get just as much out of South by without ever buying a South by badge by just going to all the free stuff that's happening around South by, because there's so much of it and it's happening all the time. And to me, the best part about South by is not how do I get into the hugest party, which by the way is the startup crawl that we put on, which is worth going to. But it's how do you get into the small, intimate dinners and events where there's going to be 20 people or 40 people or 50 people that are highly curated, that are coming from your industry or the things you're really interested in, and where you're going to get some engagement and get to make some connections. And those are the really special things. So you want to do your homework and try to do some research about who's coming to South by ahead of time and reaching out to those people and find out what's going on. You can go look at the speaker list and see who's speaking, so you can find people that are coming to Austin that are speaking that you want to meet. You can reach out proactively. Most of the other businesses and companies that you work with, a lot of them will already have plans to be coming, and you can say, hey, are you guys coming to South by? Do you have a presence? What are you doing here? Can we get together? You can organize something, organize a small dinner or an event or a big party or something like that. So you can do a lot of things ahead of time to make sure you meet the right people while you're here. And then my last piece of advice is, by the time South by actually starts, my calendar is just always completely packed with about 5 or 6 places at any given time that I want to be, because I want to see these 3 panels and go to this party and see this person. So my plan is I always have my full list of the 5 places I want to be at any given time. And then it's kind of like, I think Sun Tzu had this saying, all the plans are out the door once the first shot is fired of war. Once South by starts, then you just go with the flow. Just do whatever's the easiest thing to do, because there's lines and traffic and all these other things, and so it's just, that's my strategy is do whatever's easiest. Right now we're in the middle of Austin Startup Week, so I won't spend too much time talking about it because you guys are all exposed to it, but it's somewhat meant as a counterbalance to South by Southwest. South by Southwest is in the spring, Startup Week's in the fall. South by Southwest, while it is a lot about startups and a lot about Austin, it's really it's not really Austin. It's kind of like Austin gets transformed into Las Vegas for 2 weeks. It's like a completely different place. There's all these people here. There's all this stuff going on. And Austin's part of it, but Austin's not the highlight of it. And Austin Startup Week is really about highlighting Austin, and in particular, all the great things that happen here every week during the year, but really putting that on a pedestal and highlighting it and inviting other people from other places to come here and hopefully get them to move here and join our community and celebrating that. So thank you all for being part of that this week. One of the big highlights of that I'm really excited about is the Startup Crawl tomorrow night. And that is a massive party that we throw here and then all over downtown with all the different startups downtown. There's usually close to 100 startups that participate and about 10,000 people. And it's a great opportunity both just to have a lot of fun, to meet a lot of people, and also to get inside the offices of some of the cool companies that you may have heard of or learned about. And usually the founders will be there, and you might be able to meet them or meet other people. If you're you want to work at a company, it's a great way to, in a casual way, get to see what it's like and meet some people there and things like that. So it's a lot of fun, and here's a quick little taste of it. There's the crawl. So a couple other things. So another great thing about Austin is a Google tech hub, and Google in general just has an incredible, huge presence here. Google has a big office here where a bunch of people work. Most people that work here are typically in kind of ad sales and service, so they're helping running like the social ads that are running, other things like that. We have the autonomous cars from Google here on the road driving around. We have Google Fiber in a lot of our houses. It's just pretty awesome to have such a big presence here from them. And in particular, one of the things that's great about Google is they're so involved in the community. They really support so many different activities. They give financial support. They show up at stuff. They help participate. And they really do it in a great way where they don't really kind of meddle and get involved. They don't say like, hey, we're paying for it. We're going to tell you how to do everything. They really just try to help support great things going on in the community and get out of the way. And it's pretty awesome. So we're really lucky to have them here. Another thing that's really great is the University of Texas. It's also, like I said, it's basically just north of us right there. If your map of downtown, it's kind of like the university, downtown, the river, South Congress. The University of Texas is one of the largest universities in the country. It's got the largest graduating computer science class in the country, which is ranked, I think last I heard, 8 out of 10. It's got an incredible engineering school. It's really an amazing resource, and one of the critical components of any startup community is to have a great university with talent coming out of it that can feed it. So here's, I think, one more video about CT.
Longhorn Startup is designed to give student entrepreneurs the opportunity to work on their startup while they're in school and get real course credit for graduation. I'm a biology major.
I'm an MBA student and also earning my master's in advertising.
I'm studying electrical engineering.
I'm a junior film major and computer science minor.
We brought in some incredible speakers to meet with our students, like Michael Dell and Brett Hurd and Mark Cuban.
We have a lot of great presenters come.
The speakers are really fantastic.
When you've got a startup that's real, it's time to get involved in the lab. And the lab takes the seminar to a whole new level by giving you a bunch more credit, connecting you with local mentors, and giving you lots of time to work on your startup with your peers. I wanted to get some real world business experience before I graduated.
When I signed up for the class, I had to start defending my idea and my business model right then.
In addition to getting time to work on their startup, they get matched up with local entrepreneur mentors that work with them to improve their pitch, to focus them in the right direction, and to help them get it pointed towards funding and acceleration.
A lot of the acceleration that we've had so far wouldn't have been possible without this class.
We've had some of the greatest mentors.
I mean, the access to folks like Josh and Bob and Ben Dyer and just the entire mentor network.
They're always so knowledgeable and so helpful and always willing to give us so much support that I think not only has been invaluable, it's just been fun.
This class has linked me with a mentor that has just become an angel to us.
And it's always been a fun experience just because they're also fun people.
And you get to talk to those people and ask them questions and kind of get a glimpse into how successful people made it to where they are.
Get this kind of insider knowledge, learning what it means to make a company, to make a startup work.
There are a lot of great resources on campus for student entrepreneurs, but it's also great for them to be able to get off campus and go to Capital Factory, where they're surrounded by other real entrepreneurs that are working on their startups and learning from each other.
I'm so pleased to have Capital Factory.
It's such a great place. That's where we meet up with some of our mentors.
It's a beautiful place to work, and it's a hub of entrepreneurship in Austin.
You know, I started my first company when I was in college, but we didn't have any of these kinds of support structures. We had an entrepreneurial center, we had business courses, but nothing like this that could give me time and credit to actually work on my startup in school and learn from all the great resources that the university has to offer.
I've wanted to be in this class since it started.
This is what I came here to do, build a startup and take it to the next level.
This class has been amazing.
I love it.
Awesome. So that's one opportunity at the University of Texas. There's a lot of different ones. It's really the entrepreneurial opportunities have been growing over the past couple of years. If you one thing to throw on your calendar in advance. So next spring is the end of that class, that Longhorn Startup, is our demo day where all the startups get to go present what they're working on. That's a really great event to attend, and we always have incredible speakers there. In this case, this was Bob Metcalf interviewing Mark Cuban. If there's one person to know at the University of Texas, it's Bob Metcalf. Bob came to us about 5 years ago, and he's a professor of innovation at the university. He was one of the inventors of Ethernet and founder of 3Com. He's been a venture capitalist and a journalist. And we're just so lucky to have him here. He really inspires so many people to help them with the businesses they're working on, working with professors to commercialize the research they're doing, working with students to help them take their ideas and turn them into something real. And he's very involved in the startup community. He's at tons of events. You'll see him all over the place. He's totally accessible. You can walk up and talk to him and ask him for feedback. And I really encourage you to do that because he's pretty great. Another really awesome thing at the University of Texas is the new medical school. That's Clay Johnson, the new dean, who's standing there in the lab coat. And that's just a major, major initiative here in Austin that a lot of people are behind. It's creating a whole surge of new stuff around health innovation, both in tech and also just in how care is delivered to our community. And so that's another thing to have on your radar for sure around the university. Another great person through that is Minnie Callan. She is kind of the right-hand person to the dean, in particular deals with a lot of the innovation and other things like that. And then finally, Texas Venture Labs is a graduate program designed to help graduate students plug into startups and help them get them effectively projects and internships at startups here in town and teach them about the startup process. So a couple more quick things before we go into Q&A. How do you know what's going on? First thing is the Startup Digest. Hopefully you guys are already all signed up for that. That's startupdigest.com/Austin. It's a calendar that I helped put together for Austin, although other people do it for other cities all over the country, all over the world. And it's an email you get every Monday morning that says, here's all the things coming up that you want to go attend. And they're all sorted and categorized, and you can go figure out what things are coming up, what you want to be part of. Obviously with Startup Week, this is a big week with lots of stuff on the calendar. You can subscribe to it by email, and then if you have some event you want to be included in there, you can go submit it so that we put it in there as well. Another thing is you should join the Austin Startups Facebook group. This is an old picture. I think it's got close to 15,000 people on it now. But basically, this is the startup community online. If there was like one forum or place where people go and post stuff and talk, where you're going to reach the startup community, if you want to poll them and find out what people think, this is the place to go do it. So very active, really great group. And follow me on Twitter. That's a good way to find out what's going on. There's lots of people you can follow, but I'm following them and I'm retweeting and posting lots of stuff. So I'm a good thing to follow. And then AustinStartups.com is a Medium publication that covers basically all the things that Austin entrepreneurs are writing and talking about on Medium, which tends to be a lot of really great content. So another great thing to subscribe to and watch. And so I mentioned this blog post earlier. You should go check it out. It has a detailed list for each of these 10 items. But this is kind of the cheat sheet for how to plug into the startup scene. Again, it's bit.ly/plug into ATX startup scene. And the 10 things it'll tell you to do are to sign up for the Startup Digest. It'll give you a whole bunch of Twitter accounts to follow, certain Facebook groups to join, tell you which sites to go to for news about what's going on here in Austin, which coffee shops to hang out, which happy hours to go to, which meetups to make sure not to miss. It'll encourage you to go to a hackathon and meet people through that. Come to a co-working space where you can be around other people and different ways to learn to code. So I encourage you to check that out. A lot of people also are looking to work at a startup. I saw a number of people raise their hands. Like everything in life, personal introductions are always best. So you want to really leverage your personal network, and it's usually bigger than you think it is. But like I mentioned, volunteering, getting involved. There's lots of places to post your resume and network. Things like the Startup Crawl. It's really a big, basically recruiting fair, and there's a lot of other recruiting events that you can attend at. Going to hang out at co-working spaces and these meetups. Those are all places you're going to find the right network and connect with people to help you find a job. This is a Facebook group called Capital Factory Jobs. If you want to work at a Capital Factory startup, you can post your resume there. I think that's got now probably 5,000 or 6,000 people on it, or actually even more than that. So it's also a great way to connect with companies that are hiring. And there's another group called Austin Digital Jobs, which isn't just about startups, but tends to have a lot of overlap. And that's a great place to post your resume too. Finally, if you're looking for opportunities to volunteer, there's a Facebook group called Austin Tech Volunteers. And if you join that group, then you'll see things like Startup Week posting there, saying, talking about places where you can volunteer during Startup Week or at startup games or at other events going on. And that's a great way to find out about opportunities to plug into. I think I'm gonna jump to the Q&A. No, I'll go to the investors. So a lot of people want to know about meeting investors. Accelerators are one great tool for meeting investors. That's a lot of reasons why people join an accelerator, is to help them with that. We have a bunch of them here in Austin that tend to focus on different things. Capital Factory and Techstars are the two that focus on tech in particular. But Athena Health focuses on health tech startups that sell into doctors' offices. The International Accelerator is focused on moving startups here from Europe and other places. SKU focuses on consumer packaged goods startups, so think energy drinks and granola bars and things where distribution is a key part of making that successful. And Unlimited USA focuses on social good companies. So there's a bunch of different options. There tend to be more coming too. The Central Texas Angel Group is one of the most active angel investor groups in the country. They're based here in Austin. They have a cycle where you go apply on their website and you go through a process to get through multiple levels of screening before you get to present to the whole group. But it's a really very active angel group. They write big checks, and it's an awesome option that we have here in Austin. And then here are all of the VC firms in town. There's a lot of activity here. It seems like every few months there's a new VC firm that launches, or constantly adding a row to this table. The VCs are not that highly differentiated. They tend to mostly be Series A investors focused on tech startups. And there are a few others that stand out, like Clayton Christopher, who will do CPG deals, or Sante Ventures, which focuses more on real healthcare products and med tech. But most of it is focused on your kind of typical tech type of deals. All right. So, last thing. So, Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, writes a lot of great essays. He wrote one about great cities. And I heard about this first from a good friend of mine, Bijoy Goswami, who's another great leader in the Austin startup community. And this, his essay basically says that every great city that you know about has some unique ambition or identity that you connect with around it, and that's part of what makes it special and really kind of gives it its oomph. And so a lot of these are kind of obvious actually when you think about them. So can anybody guess, like, what does Austin want? What does Boston want to be? What's their ambition? Anybody know?
Health tech?
Health tech? There's a lot of health tech out there. That's not the one I would have said though.
Education?
Education? What do you mean by that?
There's a lot of universities there.
There are a lot of universities there. That's true. So it's actually one of the densest places of universities. So Boston, it's be smart. What about Silicon Valley? Anybody want to guess what Silicon Valley is? Be disruptive? Close to what I would say. I would say be powerful, right? Like they want to go build the biggest companies in the world and disrupt industries, right? And things like that. New York City, this is an easy one. Be rich, right? It's expensive to be in New York City. What about Los Angeles? That's another easy one. Be famous, right? It's like Hollywood. Washington, D.C. Politics. Be an insider, right? So Austin, as told by Bijoy, but I agree with, one of the things that makes Austin so special is if you look around, Austin is, anybody who hasn't seen this before have any suggestions? What's Austin?
Be weird.
Be weird. That'd be a good starting point. Anyone else? Be what?
Be hip.
I told
A
it.
lot of hipsters.
Be hip. Be hip. Be yourself. I think that's part of be weird. Be hip. Do your thing. But Austin's a place where it's like it's okay to do your own thing and to have your own way of doing it and have the Austin version of it, even if sometimes it's, you know, sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot with the Austin version of it. But Austin's really a be yourself kind of place, and that really goes well with entrepreneurship and starting companies, and I think that's something that also really makes it special. So, with that, I want to invite Damon on up. If you want to come up to come sit up here, Damon. Damon is one of the most prolific starters of community groups and events and things here in Austin. He started the Austin on Rails group, which is the monthly meetup for Ruby on Rails programmers, which is one of the biggest and most active meetups in town. And then went on to start many others. And unlike me, he's pretty good at eventually at some point it's like handing it off and getting other people to help go run them. And so then he can keep doing more of them. But he does Open Coffee, which is a great event where entrepreneurs get together every month and just socially hang out and meet each other. He does a number of different hack nights like Cafe Bedouins, which is a month. Is it monthly or weekly?
It's weekly.
A weekly hack night where they go to different coffee shops. That's the Bedouin part, is they're roaming from coffee shop to coffee shop, all working on side projects and a lot of other great things. So so couldn't have a better person here to answer questions and talk about Startup Community. So thanks for joining us, Tim. What you got?
So the groups that join Capital Factory, how often do they get funded? Do you have to get funded by an angel, and is it always an angel or whatever that invests?
Yeah, if you don't get funded, we flog you. It's you have to get funded. Most of the companies coming here are looking for money one way or another. That is a big part of what most early stage companies are looking for. Just statistically, if you forget about Capital Factory, just all startups, most of them don't get funded. And most of them don't work. That's kind of the way it works. Fortunately, like the couple that work make up for all the other ones. That's the business model, but that is the nature of it. Here, we have a lot of different companies here, and honestly, hundreds of them at any given time. So I can't actually even answer that question because I don't even know if all of them get funded. There's some of them we're closer with, work more closely with than others, and there's some that we fund. So I can tell you about the ones that we invest in. But just because we didn't invest in them doesn't mean they didn't get funded or they didn't become successful as well. For us, we have our accelerator program, which is really focused on trying to find the companies that are fundraising and the best ones and to help them specifically with that. And about a third of the companies that come in through that program get the matching funds that we offer. Now again, that doesn't mean that the 2/3 don't get funded, because lots of them do. They might even meet investors here that just aren't part of our matching program and don't make them get the matching funds. But that's kind of like, to give you one number to look at, a third of the ones that come through our program end up getting the matching funds and get funded. Probably about half of the ones that come through the program end up getting funded in one way or another.
How many of the startups that apply get in?
5%, 6%. Other questions?
Any groups or organizations related specifically to clean tech or alternative energy?
Sure. The Austin Technology Incubator, which is one of the oldest incubators in the country and based out of the University of Texas, has a clean energy, clean tech practice within what they do. And they host at least one clean tech kind of event every year that's like an investor conference kind of thing. What else is going on in clean tech?
I don't have a lot of info on that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Let's make it interesting. Politics. What is happening in Austin politically that you think is impeding us becoming a really great innovation hub? And I know you've launched some new initiatives. What are you doing, or what is the community doing to try to right that ship?
Actually, right after this talk, I'm heading over to Owen's Garage, where I'll be speaking with the mayor and someone else about tech policy. So if you're really interested, I'll give you the short answer. If you're really interested in this, follow me over to Owen's Garage at 4 o'clock. The question was, what about tech or about policy or civic engagement is holding us back? Mostly us, probably, because we're just not involved or engaged in anything.
Us meaning the tech community.
Yeah. And so I think that's the easy part. So if we just ignore everybody and let them do everything, then they're probably not going to do things that we want, and they're not going to have our input, and they're not going to we're not going to be part of it. And our typical historical way of being engaged is to ignore everybody until they do something we don't like, and then throw a temper tantrum and turn off the internet. That worked, but it's not a very collaborative way to get things done, and it keeps us from being proactive, right? And so I think we're the biggest thing holding us back. We need to get more engaged and be more educated and be part of the conversation and work together to make sure that even that we have a voice and that voice is presented and heard. I think we often don't vote, end up politicians getting elected, they pass something we don't like, and then we freak out and tell them how bad it was, instead of being part of the process of helping them pass the right thing to begin with. And I think that's kind of like, that's the biggest thing holding us back. Let's go. Way in the back.
What is the relationship with Austin and Dallas and like these other startups in Texas?
You have any sense of that?
I would say not horribly connected right now the way that they should be. There is a Facebook group that's pretty recent called Texas Startups, which is trying to bridge that gap a little bit. But I think we're kind of developing individually, and we really need to work together more as a rule.
Yeah, I just was in Dallas last week. I've spent bunch of time in Houston and San Antonio. They are fairly disconnected. I mean, there are a number of us who kind of keep in touch between it. There's some deals happening between them, but it's pretty disconnected. Austin's a much more vibrant, stronger community overall, just much larger. There's many more startups and more deals, many more experienced mentors, many more angel investors, many more investors like VCs. So there's a lot more happening here in general. There's great stuff happening in Dallas. I had a great day there last week, but it is at a different scale. Those cities are much more spread out and diverse. Sorry, not diverse, but much more spread out and not centrally located. And I actually think that has a big impact on it. You can't have a capital factory in Dallas or Houston. Like, where would you put it? Like, there's no way to pick where to put it, where it's not going to be an hour drive from a bunch of other important stuff. And so I think that's held it back a little bit. Austin is on the number 1 on every top 10 list. Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio are also on every top 10 list. Like, Texas is totally kicking ass overall. If you added up the Texas economy, all just Texas, we'd be the 12th largest economy in the world as a country. So Texas, I mean, if you can just dominate those 4 cities, like, you've got a massive market to go after. And unlike so many other places, we are so closely connected, right? You can go to Dallas for the day, you can go to Houston for the day. And so it's really easy to do business together. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think it's traditionally been actually very competitive. It's felt like it's Austin versus Dallas or Houston versus San Antonio. And I do think we're kind of on the cusp of seeing a little more cohesiveness there and really seeing the Texas opportunity and how can we leverage the best things that Houston and Dallas have to offer, which are very different than Austin, and kind of make those things work together and be more like Silicon Valley, like San Jose and San Francisco. That could be San Antonio and Austin, or Austin and Dallas, or things like that.
How do you become a mentor at Capital Factory?
You guys are sending me all the questions here. We need some more programmer questions for Damon. Becoming a mentor here is a great way to get involved, and I think people really enjoy and have a lot of fun. We do a different info session once a month that's just about that, and is a great way to get a lot of details and ask more questions. And that's also just at atxstartupscene.com to see the sign up for that. But the short answer is you meet people, because you only become a mentor. Only my friends are mentors. So we got to become friends. And part of what I mean by that is people only come in through recommendation, right? So you have to know people here. You have to work with some of the other mentors or some of the companies, so that they would say, hey, this person's really great. They'd be really helpful.
Offered and asked, but since I drove down from Dallas for the day, so do like Exhibit C or something. I'm looking for people in the ed tech space, and if anyone's interested in reaching up to Dallas to talk, but just searching for people in that space. That's where my company is.
Cool. Well, there's a ton of ed tech stuff happening here. You want to speak to that?
Well, I know there's an ed tech meetup for sure that happens every month. Is that here? Or?
Yeah.
And lots of startups that probably would be around that meetup. I can't remember who's the name of the guy that's the head of that.
Sean Duffy was one of the key people that I'd reach out to. He works here at Capital Factory, and he's one of the organizers of the EdTech Austin. And another one is Scott Lipton. He's another person I would check out. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of different EdTech startups, and the meetup's very active. They get a really good turnout. They do they do a startup weekend on EDU once a year, and some other things like that. So there's a good amount of stuff happening.
In 2017 and maybe the next 2 or 3 years, what do you see as the most disruptive technologies or trends for technology, for entrepreneurs, just in general?
In what time frame?
timeframe, maybe 2017 or maybe, or 2017 next 1 or 2 years, 2 to 3 years. After cloud computing was kind of very disruptive, very revolutionary, what do you see is on the horizon that at that level of impact or close to?
What do you think?
Machine learning, robotics. What else?
Yeah, machine learning and AI, really, really big, and certainly will be continue
Like
to be next
autonomous
year.
cars, both feed off of those.
I think autonomous cars are coming a lot faster than most people realize, so definitely there'll be stuff happening with that next year. VR, AR, huge, tons of it happening. It's still really early, but there's going to be a lot happening next year. They're just bringing burning buckets of money, to the VR table.
There was a big meetup, right, that had over 100, 150 people.
Oh, they get like 350
The
people
VR
at the
meetup
VR
that
Austin
happened.
meetup. Yeah, it's the second largest meetup in the country. It's only second to Silicon Valley. So VR is going to be huge. Chatbots, kind of interactive, whether voice or text, I think, very, very hot space. Lots of stuff going on
it's
there.
my shirt. Talk About conference just happened, and they're going to have a meetup as well. So they just made a meetup group. It's for people that do conversational technology, build bots for a living.
First in front, and then back.
What groups or events are around real estate tech? Are there any?
That's a good question.
There are a lot of companies doing. There are a bunch of companies doing real
Is there a
estate.
meetup?
Real estate tech. It's one of our largest verticals. We have a dozen real estate tech companies. I don't know of any specific events or
I don't either.
things like that.
So say a small bootstrap startup gets funding. Is there any recommendations you have in the first 30 days? Or
Spend
any
it all.
mistakes that they've gotten? Spend it all in the first. And what mistakes should they try to avoid in the first 30 or 100 days?
Don't spend it all.
So now you have two pieces of advice. You can figure out which one you should do. I don't know if it's the first 30 days or that the most significant part of it. I mean, I think maybe speaking to what Damon hinted at, it's really easy to increase your burn rate. It's really hard to decrease your burn rate. So, and it's usually when the first round of funding is actually usually the easiest. So a lot of people think like, oh, that was really easy for me to get $100,000. They think it's gonna be easy to get another $100,000, and it's usually much, much harder. When something's nothing, it's just an idea, it's all daydreams, it's easy for people to get excited about it. As soon as you have any data at all, you're held to that data. So it actually gets it gets a lot harder right as you get into it.
And just as early as you can, figure out if you have a real business, right? In that early part, or before you even really get started or spend much money, try to test things without spending money. A lot of people come to me and say they want to build their software, and they have this idea and they want to spend $20, $50, $100,000 to build their idea. That's just a bad idea to do that. You should try to prove it without the technology as much as you can.
So I came from Maine, and one of the trends that I see happening in Portland and in Boston is a lot of the early stage startups are doing a lot of offshoring as a way to get their initial development together. And I'm curious how Austin, what the general composition is of some of the tech startups, if there's a lot of offshore activity or if there's a lot more like inshore compared to some of these other startup communities.
We have some, but I would say we have a lot of software developers here too, so we're not forced into that, but some people are forced into that to try to save money, or they don't have the right relationships to get their thing built. But we have some of that, but I think it's not like the majority or anything.
In general, it's a really bad idea for building your first thing, because you probably have no idea what the first thing should really be. So if you go pay someone to build it, you're just gonna spend a lot of money and get the wrong thing. And then you're gonna have to pay more money to have them build the next version of the wrong thing. And usually it takes a bunch of versions to get to the right thing. And so most startups think they know exactly what to go build. Like they're like, oh no, I know exactly what to go build. I'm just gonna go build it and then we're gonna be fine. and they're almost always wrong. And so when you have somebody on your own team, it allows you to iterate a lot more, and your cost basis is a lot different. So you can have the time, usually have the time to go do that, and the communication bandwidth is much higher with somebody that you're sitting next to on your own team than somebody you're trying to write a perfect spec for so that you can hand it to them and they can go build it, which is really difficult to do. So I think offshoring works great for larger companies and for very well-defined problems where you know, like, that you're not building something new that nobody's ever built before, and so you can know what to go build first. But if you're building something new that nobody has ever built before, then you probably don't know the right thing to build to begin with, even though you think you do. And you should, and that's a big benefit to working closely with somebody that's, you know, that's you can kind of be real time with and interact with, and where you don't have to pay them for every line of code they write, basically.
Can you share your thoughts about the kind of general overall macroeconomic environment and the risks it pertains to startups? You know, Brett Hurt the other night mentioned that, you know, we're in a startup and economic bull market for the past 8 years, right? And I'm from San Francisco and Silicon Valley, and I've kind of been through the kind of startup bubble back in 2000 as well. So can you share your thoughts on the kind of general macroeconomic risk and how that would maybe potentially trickle down to the startup environment?
Well, Damon and I are, I think, I don't know how old you are. We're pretty close to the same age. I think he's older than me.
43.
He's older than me. But we're pretty
Not
close.
by much.
Not by much. We've been through most of the same cycle. So we both went through the first .com boom and crash in the late '90s, and then
Very instructive.
And then the housing market.
Recommend it.
Yeah, right. Then the housing market crashed in 2008. So you said 8 years. That was the last crash, right? I honestly, my biggest piece of feeling about both of those times was none of them lasted very long. It was like a year and a half period of and then it started going back up again. Both times, in my experience. So you got to make sure you got, you know, like if you only got 6 months of runway, then you gotta be worried, you know, like because you might be really hard to raise that next round of funding 6 months from now. Maybe we're not even into one of those times yet, but people are predicting maybe we're gonna be, you know, or something like that. So I do think, you know, cash is king, and you got to make sure you got runway, and you know, and you can do that. On the other hand, like none of that stresses me out that bad because I'm just like, whatever, it's gonna blow over like everything else blew over, because it's not like technology is not gonna keep solving problems or keep saving people money or keep making us money. You know, that is the answer to most of our problems still. So that is gonna, you know, still be something we go do. It's not like technology is gonna get old or like we're gonna stop using the internet or something. You know, like. And the other thing is, you know, we started Capital Factory in 2009, which is right after that last crash, and I think there's a lot to be said for, like, if you're the only one that has resources when nobody has resources, that's a great time, right? It was a great time to hire people, right, and get great talent. It's a great time to get investors if you've got something worth investing in, because it's not like during the crash the investors don't have any money. They do, and they're looking to place it. But they can be pickier, right? And everyone gets to be pickier. But if you have a great thing, then there is a lot of money looking for a home. So I just think, you know, there, in a lot of ways, that could be the best time to start a company. But the harder point is just not knowing when it's going to happen, right? So you don't want to get caught where you run out of money because you're caught in the timing of that.
You have PR firms there, and I'm wondering more from the concept of the MVP or that early proving stage, and then making the transition. You know, in lean startup, they'll recommend, you know, don't spend a lot on PR initially, but at some point you have to start getting awareness of your product out there. You know, when do you know to make that shift and start spending money on outside consultants or PR firms to help you find your way?
You know, my gut would be when you have a good product that people actually want to use, like when the thing works. And I think a lot of people have those priorities backwards, where the first thing they try to do is get a lot of press about the product or get a lot of downloads, and they're watching the downloads and like, look, lots of people downloaded it. I'm like, nobody's using it, which is like, so you're completely wasting money and wasting your press opportunity, and you know, and so like I'm building a little fun project for fun right now for me and with a friend of mine, and I'm the only one using it. I mean, there's like 2 or 3 other people using it. But like right now, I'm not in a hurry. Like I'm focused on like making it work really, really well for me, so that when I hand it to somebody else, it's awesome. And then I want to see 10 other people that use it and are like, yeah, this is, and that really I see them using it a lot. And that when I hand it to somebody, wow, they pick it up, they use it, and they really engage, and then it's ready to go put it in front of a lot of people. But it's, you know, similar to a question, that was an app I was talking about, like with a website or something, where, you know, if your website doesn't convert, then don't spend a lot of money sending a lot of people to the website. Focus on figuring out the conversion part first, and get it, and then send a lot of money people to the website, right? I think PR is kind of like that. You know, like you're going to drive a bunch of people to you. If you're not ready, if they're not going to have a great experience and become, you know, convert to being a customer, then I wouldn't do that. Other questions?
Was Capital Factory, when it was started, modeled after something similar somewhere else?
Yeah, we for the first 3 years of Capital Factory, from 2009 to 2011, we operated under the Techstars model. With their permission, they were super nice about opening the book and showing us what they had done. They'd been doing it for about a year or two before we started. And I first asked them to come to Austin to do it, and they declined at the time. Now they have lots of cities, and they are here in Austin. But at the time, they were not doing multiple cities. They were just focused in one place. Same thing with Y Combinator. We tried to get them to come here first. And so when they didn't come, then we were like, okay, well, we're going to start one. And so Brad Feld from Techstars was super helpful and nice. Sat down with me and really just opened the book and answered any questions we had about how it worked. The other thing it was based on, so the basic, like the business model economics of like 3-month program, we take 5 or 6%, they get 20 grand, like that was like the Techstars playbook, and similar to the Y Combinator playbook. The only experience I had was I had been through Trilogy University, which was in 1999, way before Y Combinator or anything like that, and they didn't call themselves an accelerator, but it was a 3-month program where people came in and they created a whole bunch of companies and they got funded and narrowed down to like ones that actually became real companies, and like it was totally an accelerator. Damon was at Trilogy as well around that time, and so actually my experience that I was building on was my time going through that and then applying that to like what I knew of the Techstars model and kind of merging those together. But then in 2012, we opened up this space. 2013, we evolved to our current model, which does not really look anything like the Techstars model and is very, very unique. There's nobody else, I think, that has a model like ours. Any other questions?
This is the can of work. How many, what's the percentage of people that come here for nonprofit?
Come to me.
Like startups that do nonprofits?
What does come to me mean?
Come to you.
Come work at Capital Factory? Come walk up to me at an event? Like,
For advice and how to be a startup that be a nonprofit.
not a lot of them. I mean, we do see them, but percentage-wise, I don't think, 1%, 2%, 3%. I don't know, small number. We do see a lot of them.
But we do have Unlimited and we have Impact Hub as well out of VUCA that are both sort of focused on helping nonprofit and social entrepreneurs, but have more connections in that space.
What advice do you have for a company that's not necessarily a new idea or disruptive? It's just like you see software out there and you know that it can be done better. So it's not necessarily like a groundbreaking idea. Any advice?
Selling stuff's usually harder than building stuff, especially in the case you just described. Sounds like building it's not hard. You look at it and you're like, I can build something better. So maybe that tells you that the building isn't necessarily the important part of it. Maybe, I don't know what it is you're building, but just I think usually most technical people that look at a problem, they're like, I can build a better one of those. They aren't even like thinking about, it's like an iceberg problem, you know, like they're seeing the top of the iceberg and they don't realize the bottom of the iceberg is a lot bigger, and that's like selling it and taking it to market and getting people to switch from that product to yours, and you know, just having a better product isn't enough. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but that would be the
And it
flip
should
side.
be at least an order of magnitude better, I would guess, to really have growth and impact that you're looking to have. It shouldn't
Or maybe
be-
that's part of the answer to the other question.
It
It's like,
shouldn't
well,
be just
are
incremental.
people going to switch if it's just a little bit better? They might not, you know.
People don't want to switch, they don't want to
In his case, would you just recommend selling your idea to your competitor, like who you're trying to improve?
It's
Have
super.
them
It's.
pay you for
I don't know anyone's ever done that. It's very hard to get them to pay for it.
Yeah.
Because like they're not gonna pay for it till they know what the idea is. And
Once they see it, they're just
once the
gonna build it
idea is,
themselves.
once you tell them what it is, they don't really need to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's not a very good idea. So, was there one more question over here?
What type of process do you guys go through when you're looking for what you should be focused on for the incubators, accelerators, and whatever you get any requests from like Big Fish, Google, Devils, like requests coming down?
Well, I mean, we take what comes. We don't. I mean, we certainly encourage certain things, but we don't. We generally, look at who applies, and so we're not driving that. Yeah, we have lots of big corporate partners, and they ask us about all kinds of stuff. We just did a big event 2 weeks ago for Mercedes. It was all about blockchain, and they really want to learn about that and meet blockchain companies. And we've done other ones around lots of other topics like that, and that is a big part of what they come to us looking for.
Do you have an opinion on crowdfunding as a seed base for to be anticipated Series A and B fundings thereafter? The new equity crowdfunding technique.
Yeah. I mean, it probably depends for one thing on the site and how they do things, but you don't want to have a lot of individual investors. That's one thing that will be a problem down the road when you're trying to get Series A and things like that. You want to have a really clean cap table. But I think some of the companies are trying to fix that, like AngelList rolls up a bunch of investors into their syndicates program, and that can be a single line on the cap table. So I don't know, that's one thing I would worry about, but I don't know a ton about it. I know the regs have finally been kind of implemented to let average citizens invest. You don't have to be accredited, but I don't know a ton about the current state of it.
Is that something you see more as kind of see how it evolves with some of the agreements?
It's very new, and then you do see a lot of hardware companies using Indiegogo and Kickstarter to get like pre-orders, which may not be what you're talking about, but that's kind of proof that your product is real. You're developing a market, but pure crowdfunding where just random people on a website give you money, it's still very new, and I don't know. I'm watching it, but I don't say I highly recommend it if you have other options.
Well, there was a seminar yesterday, part of the Startup Boston Week, and one of the VCs gave a presentation, did integrate crowdfunding, that he was seeing more of this. I'm just curious, your perspective.
And there may be developing good ways to work with investors now too, because they know that that's an issue. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, like Damon said, I would really differentiate customer pre-orders like Kickstarter and Indiegogo from equity-based crowdfunding, which I think are two very different things that often get grouped together. Kickstarter is awesome, and everybody loves it. And if you can pre-sell your product before you build it, like that's great, and that's going to help you raise money from investors because you have proven demand. Crowdfunding is also great, and I've seen it be very, very helpful to a lot of companies. Investors don't like it. So it tends to be that you're going down one path or the other.
That was my question.
Yeah, it's like if you're going down the crowdfunding path, you're probably going way down the crowdfunding path. And if you're gonna go raise money from VCs, they're gonna see that as a messy thing.
Okay.
So with the large amount of developer talent here, everyone from the UT school and then all these coding schools, what characteristic would you advise to look closely at when hiring?
So, you mean with all these kind of new grads that are coming onto the scene? I mean, I do meet a lot of them, and I try to just encourage them to build actual projects with the skills that they've learned so that they can point at GitHub and show source code, and they can point at websites that actually function and say, hey, I built this. Not just a project you did during the thing with some friends that were part of the program, but like build something real. Because a lot with programming, it has to do with what you can do. You don't have to have a computer science degree. You just need to be able to actually build things, and ideally things that are of a high quality, and hopefully you've been taught well if you're able to do that. But it's super hard to differentiate yourself when you're in a sea of graduates that have the same training that you do. So how do you do that? And I think it's you build your network by meeting as many people as you can in these meetups, like Josh said, and then it's building useful things and giving them to people and showing them that they actually work and that they're really cool and your source code is clean and all of those kinds of things. It's a very transparent kind of world we live in. GitHub is chock full of, tens of thousands of projects. It's easy to point someone and say, hey, look what I did.
Yeah, I totally agree. If I was interviewing, I'd be, I wanted, it was an entry-level type person. I wanted to differentiate them. What have you done? Show me something you did.
And startups want help too. Like they don't have a lot of money, right? So maybe you could even volunteer to help build something, while you're in the interim, or you can do your own projects. But that was just a thought that came to my mind is people always have these ideas and they want to get stuff built. And obviously you want to get paid for your work, but there's this like gray area there where you're trying to jump over the hurdle of having a programming job. And I think volunteering is one way to sort of jump the hurdle.
Yeah. All right, one more question.
So the flip side of that, as the employer, if I'm not looking for a recent boot camp grad, but want to find some senior developers, aside from meetups, are there other places I can go to find more senior guys?
Well, the more senior it is, the more that it's going to all happen through personal networking. It's just the nature of it. The more senior they are, the more desirable they are, the more they aren't on the market ever. And so you gotta either work your ass off to know people and to make those connections and to network really well, or you end up hiring a recruiter, right? And that's what they do. They track all these people and where they are. I'm not personally, I know lots of great recruiters and I'm fans of them as people. I'm not a fan of using recruiters. I tend to try to do it other ways, but obviously I've got a big network I can leverage, and other things like that. And, but that typically a recruiter, you don't need a recruiter for an entry-level position. You need a recruiter for a senior position, or you need to have an awesome network.
Are there, just as a follow-up, I have a dev shop and foundry in LA, and I'm opening up an office here. And one of the tools we use in LA is there's a group called JSLA. It's a JavaScript group for all of LA. And so the Slack channel, so everybody talks on Slack. Are there similar things out here that we should be looking to get into?
Yeah, a lot of the meetups are using Slack now. Most of the meetups are on meetup.com, and then a lot of them have Slack groups once you get into the meetup. And they often have a jobs channel or a hiring channel, or I'm looking for a job channel. For example, Austin on Rails, we added Slack in this past year, and we have a few different channels, but it includes I'm looking, jobs and general discussion. Those are three that we have. So that for sure, but I think the networking is key when you want to try to meet senior people. You got to ingrain yourself into the community. So you said besides meetups, but that's where a lot of these folks congregate. So you need to sort of, you or someone in your company needs to be a part of those communities and be there for more than a transaction, be there for relationships.
I just said besides meetups because that was obvious. I was going to hit those, but if there's anything about Austin specifically.
I mean, hackathons, was an answer that we often give is, there's people there that are building cool stuff and you can literally see what they've built in a weekend. Things like that, but they're just fewer and further between.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Damon, for joining us today. I hope you all enjoy the rest of Startup Week, and in particular, don't forget the Startup Crawl is tomorrow night, starts at 5. Best party in town, except for the one during South by, and it's a lot of fun. So hopefully we'll see you all there. Thanks.